G'day people. Look, I'm feeling very refreshed and invigorated right now because I've just come back from 2 weeks in Victoria. What a 2 weeks it was. Hunting what is, in my humble opinion, the greatest game animal on earth, and that is our Sambar deer. Also the third largest species of deer on earth after moose and elk. An incredibly elusive deer, even though they're quite abundant at the moment. And a wonderful, wonderful source of wild venison that we can legally hunt every single day of the year if you're in the right area. Folks, I'm an amateur Sambar deer hunter at best. I've only shot 12 in my life. I'd like to shoot a lot more. Keep trying. I mean, but that's what some hound crews would get in just a weekend these days, you know. I mean, for me, Sambar hunting fits really well into a self-reliance lifestyle because one deer on the ground yields just so much meat. And I know there's a lot of you out there who'd be super keen to get involved in that. Maybe even just taking one would make such a huge difference. You might only have that one hunting trip in your life. I just wanted to put down a few basics in this video about just some of their patterns and behaviour. And I can't go too complex because this can just go out of control, and I'm still learning so much. I've barely hit the intermediate stage, I reckon. So for the purpose of this video, look, I'm not actually going to go into any regulations or laws, except to say that Victoria has very liberal open hunting laws and heaps of public land access, but that's your responsibility to go and check that out on the GMA website, or indeed the New South Wales DPI website as well, because Sambar deer are present in southern New South Wales in ever increasing numbers too. Now Sambar occupy a huge range of habitat, all from coastal areas all the way to the very highest peaks of Australia. For the purpose of this video, I want to try and just focus on some fringy areas, you know, lowland forests and stuff like that where people can access it a bit more easily, because obviously this is a 101 video and I don't really have much more than the 101 to offer. Hopefully this vid just has a few hints and tips just to help paint a picture of their behaviour more than anything else. And because once you can just break through a few of those mental barriers, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing a lot more deer and you want to be going hunting a lot more often. I do want to emphasise, guys, it is very important just to get out there and spend time, and don't be disheartened by a few days where you're not seeing much or you're only getting brief glimpses, all that kind of thing. Stick with it. It's a journey that's worth taking. Guys, good times will be natural. Hope you enjoy.
All right. Well, here's a fantastic little section of Victorian high country, 3D, which I love. And this is what I consider to be absolutely classic Sambar deer habitat. And what we have here is we've got two valley arms of farmland and pasture snaking up along some river systems here. And what we also have is a whole lot of little basins, ridge lines, creeks flowing into them. I mean, even here off the back of a high peak here, headwaters of a creek, flowing its way all the way down to the valley floor. And we're constantly finding these little gully sections, spurs gullies that are flowing in towards them, and all this forms fantastic Sambar deer habitat. So over the course of this film, what I'd really like to be doing is just, you know, isolating one little bit, zooming in and seeing if I can maybe point to where I think the deer might be depending on time of day, time of year, weather, etc. But also how a beginner might go about trying to get onto a few. Alrighty, well, look, let's just have a look at what an average Sambar deer's daily routine could potentially look like. And I want to remind everyone I'm speaking in generalizations here. Like any living creature, they've got free choice and their environment throws curveballs at them, like hordes of wild dogs or hound dogs or rifles from hunters, that kind of thing. Now, just hypothetically speaking, they might have spent most of the evening out grazing on this little section of pasture here, and you know it's coming to daybreak and they'd like to make their way up into the comfort and safety of these hills around here. Now, I want to just emphasize something. It is very, very, very unlikely that you're going to see Sambar deer standing in the open in broad daylight. Very unlikely. I'm going to just show you this footage here now just because it's the only time I've ever seen it. If you were going to see Sambar in the open, I'd say very early mornings, probably your most likely time. And you might see it in, you know, dappled bushland that's starting to break into the open, into pasture. Anywhere that gives them just a little bit of a sense of security from the bush, but also something to nibble down on as well as they make their way up into the bush line. Now, pasture is not the be-all and end-all of their food source. In fact, it's not their primary food source. They can eat basically anything in a lot of these hills. The browsers, not necessarily just grazers, but assuming that this is where a lot of them want to be tonight, come 5 a.m. in the morning, they're like getting a bit toey. They want to move up into the hills, want to see their bedding area where they feel a bit more comfortable. Some of them, it might just be as simple as skirting the edge of the fringe and then just popping up to a tiny little gully like this. Could be the same on the other side. Some might just have a little bit of a game trail that they've used for a while there, which gives them a look towards the bottom of the hill, gets them to their pasture easily, but then they end up just bedding up somewhere like there. Or even just something like that. It can be as simple as that. Now, for a lot of others, their day might have started with them travelling all the way up the river here, mooching and feeding along the way, planning to eat along the river flats and planning to browse on, and then they might go all the way up a spur here. Again, for some, it might actually be all the way up this ridgeline here. Maybe they feel comfortable just along the other side there. Now, for a beginner, this might start to be a bit random and feel like, all right, well, how do I ever get myself on top of this species? Well, let's just start narrowing it down according to a few factors. Now, for deer that are bedding closer to their primary feeding areas, the main factor with that is they're just not feeling too pressured. Now, you'll find a lot of this in areas that don't get much hunting. You might find that a private property's kind of prevented a patch of public land being easily accessible to hunters, or they have to come around the long way. So these deer just aren't getting any pressure. Maybe the farmer doesn't mind them, doesn't shine the spotlight around too much, so they're closer to their pasture. But as soon as you get hunters on the go, but also maybe a pack of wild dogs in the area, that's when you're going to start seeing them want to go much further up, just for their own sense of security and safety. Now, for the middle of the day, the sambar might be up in his nice little bedding area. Now, the deers might get up at midday just for a little bit of a mooch around. At this time, they might even think about switching gully sides potentially, but chances are they'll probably just stay in and amongst the vicinity of its bedding area. Get to about 2 to 3 in the afternoon, they're going to be thinking about getting back to their feeding areas again. So they might slowly, very slowly, start mooching their way back down. And they're feeding along the way too. They're browsing, nibbling new shoots, roots, all kinds of stuff. For some of them, they might feel more comfortable just getting right close to the river, because there's some food along there too that they might find more appealing. Point is, you might get deer moving and making their way that slowly that they won't reach that pasture by sundown. For a lot of them, it'll just be mooching their way along, maybe get to the pasture, but then just easing their way along the side of it, just till they get a bit more confidence, especially when it's darker. Poke their noses out, start having a nom nom. Now here we are facing in a northerly direction, and presuming that the time you're hunting sambar deer is at probably a cooler time of the year, whether it be from autumn through to late spring, the evenings in the high country are going to be very cold. And that's a great time to hunt because it's good for meat. I think animals do spend a bit more time actively when it's not too hot. I want to picture first thing in the morning, crack of dawn, in the northeast. Let's have some sun. You know what the sun looks like anyway. Beating down its fat rays upon our hillsides here. Ooh, like that. Beautiful. Now, so the point here I'm just trying to illustrate is what side of the mountain is going to get sun first? Well, it's these eastern facing sides. It's these northeastern facing sides, particularly on this side. And if a deer's had a cold night, getting itself warmer into the sun is the only place it's going to want to be. So here's an example where, again, first thing in the morning we know that this side of the hill, just here, is going to be the warmest. And getting all that first sun. So our deer could be coming from a bunch of different directions. Here's a lovely conglomerate around here. They might have moved their way up along the riverbank, but then coming towards morning and they're still pretty cold, or they just want to come up to the top and bed. Or, for example, they could have come up from the other side quite early too, knowing that those first rays are going to hit the very top of the hillside. Just poke over the other side, get the first sun there. But here's another factor I want to just bring up, and I don't want to get into it too much just yet because I don't want to dump too much information all at once. But if you've got a warmer side of the hill here, it's been very cold overnight. First things that are going to happen, that's the first part of this chunk of Victoria that's going to start warming up. And as soon as you get a patch of land like that warming up, you're going to get air warming up. You've got thermals. So you're going to have these air currents coming straight up the hill here. Early morning thermals. What that can also do is actually draw kind of an air system almost up the entire gully system like this. So you'll almost have air coming from all the way down there, warm rising air coming straight up. Vice versa with the afternoons. When you're getting afternoon sun belting down on the western facing sides or the northwestern facing sides, you're likely to get a nice little thermal of air coming up this side of the hill. About, 1 in the afternoon onwards, whilst the day's still warm. And this is not always the case. I mean, if you've got a windy day, prevailing westerly, well, I can probably bet that most of the wind's going to come from that. And if it's a bit of a hectic stormy day, well then everything here is going to be all over the bloody shop. Now, if Sambar Deer does smell you, it's not 100% game over, but geez, they've pinpointed you and your whole day is going to get a hell of a lot harder. If you can plan your stalks around this and then just have the most trump cards in the hand, the highest roll of the dice each time, the best chance of luck, you should do that for yourself. Have a look at another similar system. So obviously there's the pasture area there. There's our big divide. We've got that eastern facing side. Nice gullies flowing in that way. First from the west, western facing side. So in the afternoon, we'd be expecting, and if there's no massive prevailing winds going on otherwise, I'd be expecting nice little currents to be coming up here. Now, later on in the day though, and this is kind of the complete opposite of what we're talking about in the morning, reverse thermals. So later in the afternoon, and there's this western side that might have been getting a few air currents coming up. Some of them might be coming down and over the top of the hill like that. That's very possible. But more to the point, this whole side of the hill is not getting any sun for the afternoon, and it's towards the end of the day, it's getting cooler. That air's contracting, so we're starting to really get some predictable downdrafts coming off this side of the hill. And it'll only get a little bit more like that towards the end of the day. And we're not talking about crazy strong wind, we're just talking about contracting air, slight breeze coming down off this side of the hill. Not always, unless if you've got massive easterlies and storms predicted, well then it's probably blowing up that way too. We can use this trend to know that if it's generally a quiet or still day, that, well hang on, having the wind in our face for an afternoon stalk, now that's ideal. Hey, I reckon I want to be right there. Wouldn't that be cool? Because you know what, these deer might not go all the way down to the fringe by that time. You might want to be a bit further up the gully. Now, this is basically how my first day of hunting the other day in Vic played out. I took advantage of this understanding and got myself up to what I'd call a little conglomerate here, where one creek flows into this one. My approach in was slow and quiet because they did not have far to travel at all, so I could take from about 3 o'clock onwards just a really slow, quiet move up into position there, have a relax, but also take advantage of a few cool thermals coming down from here. But also, according to their patterns, I was expecting to have sambers coming down to come closer to this pasture from all directions. So all of a sudden, I've got more than just a couple of dice rolls in the pocket. I know that there's deer coming down from multiple different areas. I had seen plenty of sign and very active game trails and wallows here in the past, so it's often a place they come through. Some of the past for least resistance, so a really good night of feeding. So I really thought my chances were pretty good here. So let's see what happened.
Got my ears out. I'm just on a real... It's the confluence. A conglomerate. Big word for you. A conglomerate of 3 creeks. About an hour and a half before dark. I'm feeling very chilled. No rifle. It's just a footage session. It's the first night I'm here to kind of hunt properly, so footage of Sambar Deer for me right now. It's pretty brilliant. Close. Can you hear that? Oh my fucking god. That's right. I'll get a few of you in the open, please. Do it again. Do it again. Beep. Sparky's still there. Sparky in there behind him. So just check out this bit of footage here. Young stag enjoying some full open sun on a northeastern facing slope in the morning. I think it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock from recollection. But also just watch what he's nibbling on there. Just look how he strips those young shoots. I feel like that forms the majority of Sambar's diet. It's browsing on shrubs and new shoots, new growth, maybe little bracken tops and things like that. I see a lot of that grazed on. So it just goes to show that they don't need the grass at all, and they're very happy up there in the hills. I mean, every herbivore is going to take some pasture if they can, but yeah, no, this would definitely make up the majority of their diet. And I do try to take note of what they're nibbling on, but it can be so varied and so wide that it's hard to keep up with. So obviously, Sambar are renowned for being a difficult animal to hunt, but I also feel like they're quite predictable, and they do have a few Achilles heels. I mean, the first one, the big noticeable one, is their honk. Isn't that fantastic? I mean, there's nothing like it in the bush. It's so strong. I mean, it literally is like an air horn going off sometimes. And, you know, obviously that's an alarm call of sorts for them. I know first thing I feel like doing is just shitting myself. It's that fucking full on sometimes if you don't expect it. But also they're giving away their location. Now they love staying to the thick stuff. They love thick cover wherever they can get it. You might not see them very often, but sometimes if you haven't seen them and would never see them, they'll let you know they're there by honking. So they've given themselves away. And some people will wait for the roar to hear red and fallow be vocal for those 3 weeks of the year. Sambar are vocal all year round, and you can really use that to your advantage. Got to say that they are a very sensitive species Like, I mean, they'll hear you from ages away. They won't necessarily just bolt. They'll use that cover to their advantage as best they can. And if they haven't smelt you or picked up exactly what you are, they can just stand there waiting until you're very close. I mean, 10 meters is not uncommon, and still not really able to see them properly either, or have a proper shot off. It can result in some very exhilarating standoffs. Being close to that kind of large animal is always unbelievably exciting. So yeah, I mean, they've got a heap of skills to survive and avoid you, but at the same time, once you get to know them, you can really exploit some of their weaknesses quite easily.
I'm not going to go too far into tactics, just because that could be a whole other video that I might be able to do in the future, and I might have a lot more to add there, because in the future I might have more sambar deer hunting experience and be dropping more on the ground. But here's a small one that's just helped me and might help you. Here we are. We've got our little ridgeline here, a whole bunch of little areas I like to hunt. If you had a fire trail along the top here, you could camp up the night there and start there in the morning if you could. But you know, if you don't have a four-wheel drive, or if there is no access roads there at all, what you could do is just start from down the bottom where you might be camped, and really early morning just bust your way up a spur, hopefully before the deer start moving too much. And then from there, you can find your way, contouring across, maybe just 1/3 from the top. And I think I've explained this before in another video, but you know, it's giving you access to look up and down, and again, intercept anything that's heading up. So just say you've come along and here you are, you've bumped into a deer, you've got the honk, you've seen its ass waddling off. You think, oh, well, day's over. Sometimes not. What you can do instead is, yes, the animal might have spooked, maybe run off that way. But I find if you can go up a little higher and then start cutting in across like this, it's a 50-50 chance maybe, but what you could have is that the deer runs away and seeks a better advantage or a safer spot further up the hill. And then you can re-bump into it there. And especially if it maybe didn't get your scent, well, then what it's going to do is want to head up this way and maybe even curve itself around to try and get that thermal scent that's coming up and identify what you are if it's not quite sure that you are a human or not. That's a little tactic that's worked for me a few times.
Thank you, Sam behind. Next shot. As you can see, it's a fringe dweller. And that's why I just thought, I mean, it's so rare to have them lying down like this. But yeah, the next shot is absolutely essential. I'm not going to deal with one of those conversations about an animal that was shot legally but found illegally, so I had to anchor her. From all I could see, that she passed away straight away, nice and clean. Well, after a good week of chasing these beautiful creatures around, it's been fantastic to finally get one myself. Beautiful hind. Oh guys, I love sambar deer hunting, and look, I really, really hope that whatever content comes out in this video, that it is beneficial to any of you guys who are just getting started into the game. Folks, sambar deer hunting is one of the most generous and abundant hunting opportunities in the world right now. And look, it's a challenge. It requires physical strength and sometimes some mental resilience too, but, you know, for the worth of all this meat, I think your good times will be natural. Just to finish, I'd just like to give massive thanks to a really great fella who spent a whole week of this trip with me, and we got some great footage together, shared some great times together, and he got his first sambar stag. Man, it was just a real privilege to be with you for that one. Thanks for travelling so far. Your company was fantastic, mate, and thanks for sharing so much venison with me and my cousins. It was happy days all round for everyone. I'm looking forward to the next trip, mate. It's going to be fantastic. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. Wish everyone the very best of luck for their hunting for the rest of the year. Enjoy it safely and responsibly. Push yourself to go that little bit harder sometimes, and yeah, get your good times natural. Catches.